hello to Damien from Cheshire Cat Musings. Hello there, Damien.
Good evening.
Good evening to you. Good evening to you. I don't know if you heard us talking there about NGOs and so on, but I know you made a video. You
Yeah.
got quite a few good views on that about hope, not hate. Now, just so that people know, this is basically a charity, so-called. Also, you could call it a non-governmental organisation, gets a huge amount of money from the British taxpayer, and its job is to hunt down, well, I don't know if they hunt down people like you, Damien, but certainly they hunt down people like me and others, because our organisation appeared in its annual report, which it calls The State of Hate, which has got a nice rhyme to it. And we appeared this year. We may have appeared last year, but we certainly made the pages of The State of Hate. And so this is a group that's not on our side whatsoever. What were you saying in your video?
Well, I have been quite surprised that we're finally getting a Tory MP actually coming out and moving on hate not hope, as I call them. They've written to the Charity Commission. This is the MP for Windsor, and they've written to the Charity Commission because they are acting in a partisan way. And to that I say, well, no shit, Sherlock, pardon the language. They are completely partisan. Now, I've made points on my channel previously. It wouldn't necessarily matter if the NGOs were evenly balanced. If you've got NGOs that are right-leaning and you've got NGOs that are left-leaning, it wouldn't necessarily be that big of a deal if it was evenly distributed. However, the NGOs that the government currently has, they are skewed towards the left, and that's to preserve, my view is to preserve the Blairite regime that was ushered in 1997, and that's what it is. So me and you talking about nativism, talking about Christianity, talking about keeping Britain resembling the Britain that we grew up in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s, according to the NGOs like Hate Not Hope, that's as far-right extremism. Whereas I think it's completely milquetoast. I think it's completely acceptable. Now, the Spectator did an article on Hope Not Hate, I think it was last week or the week before, where one of their people actually posed under a false identity with a fake passport, and they were trying to speak to a pro-nativist group, pro-natal group, which is pro-life,
Yeah.
anti-abortion. And this is who they will target. So say, for example, the state's got a view on the fact of, well, it's a woman's right to choose. It's abortion up until the day of birth is perfectly fine. That's just come in the British Parliament. Well, if you've got a contrary view to that, you're a far-right extremist.
Yeah. Just calling everybody that disagrees, basically.
Well, yeah. And here's the thing, right, with our politics in the UK, it's so skewed left that anything slightly to the right of where the polite discourse is, the state can brand as far right, even though it's not far right, all things being equal, because our Overton window, because our discourse is so far to the left. If you stick a pinky over that to the right, you're a far right extremist. And that's the issue with the NGOs like Hate Not Hope. I would put Care for Calais in the same bracket. I would put Stand Up to Racism in the same bracket. Now, they don't just get funding from the British state, they get funding from trade unions. My trade union that I used to be with was the Communication Workers Union. I seen one of these stand-up to racism protests that was going to be a counter-protest, and I see the trade union that I was in at the time, their sticker on the front of it, basically advertising the rally, and I was like, hang on. Is my dues, is my union subs paying for this nonsense? Because I've not agreed to that. and that's when I quit my trade union. And there's also other funders, so it's not just the British state, it's not just the trade unions, it's like the National Lottery. So if you pull a line on the National Lottery, you don't know how they're going to allocate the money. They say it's for worthy causes. Well, who decides what a worthy cause is? The British state decides what the worthy cause is. You'll never. Here's my view as well. Rupert Lowe's Restore Britain. They could be a very powerful NGO for the right of centre politics. So if Reform, which I think they will get in at the next election, they could have actually policy designed by Restore Britain, Rupert Lowe. Rupert Lowe doesn't have to like Nigel Farage. He doesn't have to completely support, because they're a separate organisation now. So if you had a team of people that are working with that would redress a lot of the balance. Would you agree?
I would agree, to an extent. I think and I would support such an idea, absolutely. I think that the sorts of people who work in NGOs and such like are not like us. They're not our people, as it were. The people who enter that field are themselves very much of a type, if you know what I'm saying.
As
And
in,
politically,
are you on about middle class? Are you on about social status? Or are you on
I know
about specifically?
I'm on about where their political views lie. I'm
Okay.
saying it's not. I don't like using these labels, but say right wing, say that kind of person doesn't enter the NGO world, doesn't enter the third sector, rarely goes into charities. You know, that's a
What if they go out
field.
in the private sector making money for themselves? Basically, that's what the right wing capitalists would do.
Yeah, sort of like that, in the sense. So it's not like there would suddenly be a burgeoning of patriotic NGOs. But I think what you're saying is a good idea. I mean, I'd like to think that should be encouraged. But why aren't they there already? You know, why are all the NGOs?
Because it's against the Blairite regime. This is the thing. When the Tories got in 2010, yes, they were in a coalition with the Lib Dems. Yeah, okay, acceptable. But they could have repealed anything that Tony Blair brought in. They could have got rid of devolution. They didn't have to stick with the Supreme Court. They could have got rid of Ofcom. The Tories put through the non-crime hate incidents, and the Tories put through the Office for Budget Responsibility, which now dictates where the government, where the Chancellor can actually cut or spend.
Yes.
And I'm like, so any particular government policy of any substance is not decided by the front man that you see at the cabinet. It's decided by these NGOs. They're arm's reach. They're not elected. They're deciding government policy, and they're not accountable.
Yeah, that's true. You know, and you talked there about the Blairite regime. Well, it's just reminded me, and I'm just looking it up here on Wikipedia, but there was a group, I don't know if they're still around, you don't hear so much about them, called Unite Against Fascism. And that was formed in 2003. And one of the founding signatures, and it was like a street group gang in some ways, you know.
Yeah.
And one of the founding signatures, right, this would blow everybody's mind. I've known about this for years, was David Cameron. Just take away that thing there, and you'll see down at the bottom, if we just clear away the red stuff, founding signatories included David Cameron, later Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And so, no wonder they didn't do anything. No wonder people like Cameron and so on did nothing during that period. I mean,
well, he saw himself as the heir to Blair.
Yeah.
And Tony Blair actually turned around and said that. He actually said that he saw David Cameron as his successor. The only differentiation between what I call the Uni Party is really if they're going to spend a bit more or a little bit less on tax. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much the difference. Nothing,
Yeah.
nothing substantive change on migration. Nothing substantive on actually slimming down the states. It's all big tax, big spend, and this is why Reform UK and maybe Advance UK in a year or two are going to be gaining traction. They're going to be getting a lot of traction. Now, back on Restore Britain, I don't know if you realise this or not, but earlier this week they put out a petition
Who's this?
regarding
Sorry.
Restore Britain.
Oh, Restore Britain. Yeah, yeah.
They put out a petition that's already got over 300,000 signatures, which means it'll be debated in the Houses of Parliament, and it's for mass deportations and offshore detention centres for new arrivals. Now, the fact that 300,000 people have signed it and they only put the petition up 2 days ago, this is the power of Restore Britain as an NGO potentially. What they're doing is, like my old MP, Mike Amesbury, I used to bring issues of migration to him all the time on emails and letters. Never got a response. And it was never brought up by my Labour MP in the House of Commons. So he was never making present the legitimate concerns of his constituents. It was very much a diversity is a strength, toe the party line. But when you've got a MP like Rupert Lowe, who can put out a petition and get 300k signatures within 2 days, and he's going to bring it to the Commons and say, right, we're going to have mass deportations, or this is what the people want, and we want offshore processing and detention centres.
Yeah.
It's never happened before.
Yes, it's never happened before.
Because from the Uniparty's point of view, from Labour and the Tories' point of view, the concerns of migration or the demographic change of these islands is not something they concern themselves with. That's a far-right concern. And because of organisations like Hope Not Hate or Hate Not Hope, however you want to phrase it, that's why they do what they do. They're very much there to reinforce the centrist regime, the liberal consensus, the post-war consensus. That's exactly their job. That's exactly why anybody like at this march on the weekend, the United Kingdom, is very lazy and is very convenient for the legacy media to label anybody on that march as a far-right bigot. It's very easy and convenient. But they're doing exactly what we're told we should never do, which is tarring everybody with the same brush.
Yes, yes. Well,
all migrants are criminals, all migrants won't integrate, all migrants are a threat to our women and children. We're always told don't do that because that would be racist, that would be xenophobic, that would be inappropriate. But as soon as they excuse the opposite way to the native white man of Britain, they've got no problem putting out all the eggs in the one basket and saying, right, we're just going to define them in the simplest terms and the easiest definitions. Hand me down morality. If you don't agree with us, there's nothing down for you.
Good point. Good point.
It's the two-tier hypocrisy of Keir Starmer's Britain.
Two-tier hypocrisy of Keir Starmer's Britain. I like that. That should be a subtitle for a book. Actually, maybe you could write that one. I'll talk to you in a moment about the march because I believe you were on it. But just to circle back to what's happening with the Hope Not Hate people now, is this guy a Tory? He wrote this letter. Let's just clear up the screen here. And he wrote it to the Chief Executive of the Charity Commission, Jack Rankin MP, Member of Parliament for Windsor. I presume he's a Tory for Windsor.
So, yeah, Windsor Castle, obviously, it's heart of the British royalty. It's probably one of the safest Tory seats in the entire kingdom.
Right, right. And so he is questioning the charity status of this group. And he points out that if you're a charity, you should not exist for a political purpose, that political activity must not be the continuing and sole activity of the charity, that the funds must only be spent on delivery of the charity's purposes, that its resources must not fund or support non-charitable purposes. That's a big one. That an organization with a political purpose, such as promoting a change in the law, legally cannot be a charity, and that a charity must guard against the possible leakage of its charitable funds, meaning that the money is contributed to a coalition or alliance must not be spent for purposes other than those of the charity. And he's referring here to the large amount of money that that they've been getting there. In the second paragraph, in 2023, this charitable trust, which is to say the one associated with Hope Not Hate, granted 650,000 to something called Hope Not Hate Limited. Almost all of its expenditure for that year, 650,000. What you and I, Damien, could do with £650,000, we could literally change not just Britain, but the world. I mean, we could do that, no question about it. But these guys, they just literally, the proverbial up the wall with that money on salaries and no doubt posters as well.
Well, not just that. The march that I was at on the weekend, I actually looked on Hope Not Hate's website, and they actually had a crowdfunder or a GoFundMe
Oh, yeah.
for the counter protest. And I don't know if it's because it's done through a crowdfunder and not necessarily the larger donations from the British state to the organisation, whether that would fall into the disrepute of the charity, because they're actually crowdfunding from the public a partisan position. If you take the view that the United Kingdom rally was a political rally. By the way, with that political rally on the weekend, there was a very, very welcome Christian overtone to the whole thing. They had clerics there. They had preachers, and there was a gospel choir near the end, and they were singing Jerusalem,
Okay.
which is all very, very welcome. There was a theme of the Islamification of Britain that nobody voted for, and it's welcome that I mean to me these are legitimate concerns. To me,
Oh,
these
yeah.
are legitimate concerns that we should have. And to me, if you're changing the religion of the country, whether that's I think it's Presbyterian you've got in Scotland or C of E down in England, if that changes over a century, shall we say, nobody ever voted for that.
Oh, and yeah, no, that's true. Nobody voted for it, and the media are only now going to, and the other parties are only now picking up on it because there's a genuine democratic threat to their order. Just to go back to this letter here, it says, second last paragraph, between 2019 and 2020, the trust received 141,000 in direct government grants, on top of 150,000 from the Home Office Counter Extremism Unit. This is supplemented by funding from other trusts and funds that themselves receive considerable government funding. In this context, abuse of the charity system, as described above, becomes a direct affront on the taxpayer and raises questions around potential misuse of public funds. But that's £150,000 from the Home Office. Okay, and what do they do with it? They publish a brochure, and I'm in it.
That's probably due to the Muslim network of the Home Office, which is 700 individuals that are in the Home Office and they're deeply embedded in there. And now they've got a Muslim Home Secretary in Shabina Mahmood. I'm sure they're going to get on like a house on fire. Now, what I find concerning is that we know that 90% of the MI5 watch list are Muslim extremists, Islamists. So if we've got NGOs like Hope Not Hate or Hate Not Hope getting that funding from the British state to tackle people like me or you, then all things being equal, there should be one that's targeting the Islamist extremists. And if you're going to do it per capita or proportionately, they should be getting, 9-10 times the funding that these people get.
I like it. I like the maths.
It's about the
Definitely.
proportionality of the concern. Just
And
to
fairness.
just to reiterate as well, there's 4 million Muslims in the United Kingdom. Many may be peaceful, but the peaceful majority is usually irrelevant. If you look at mid-century Germany during World War II, yes, you had the mid-century Germans like the Austrian painter that were running Germany, but the peaceful majority of Germans, they were irrelevant to what the regime was going to do. So it's the same here. Now, if you think of the numbers, if you've got 90% of the MI5 watch list is Muslim demographic, that's 1 in 100 of the 4 million Muslims in the country. So out of every 100 Muslims you meet, one of them will be on the terror watch list. It's not the same for the far right gammons like me and you. You're not going to. Proportionately, it's much less of a concern, especially if their biggest concern is people like me or you venting our spleen on our YouTube channels. If that's their biggest concern.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, and the foreigners, they all think alike, and they're not all dangerous, but they all will side with each other at the end of the day. It's not like this idea that there's that they're all going to become like totally integrated and just become like some sort of secular type of normal, just like a kind of bland Britain or something. No. They all have a tribe, shall we say, and they stick to it in a way that people like you and I don't really ever think about. But these guys, and because I know some of them, and I know I speak to them, and they think in ways that your average Joe would be shocked by.
Well, not just that. I find it's very the way I phrase it is like most other religions. Like if you look at Christianity as a whole, have got more liberal as time goes across.
Yeah.
Meaning the Church of England was very much against divorce, which is why Edward VIII had to abdicate back in the 1930s. Now it's much more acceptable. Now, and other things like if you look at the habits that nuns wear and whatnot, you can get many nuns now and they don't even wear their traditional habits. But if you look at the reverse in the Islamic faith, it's getting more extreme. Because it used to be, I don't know if you knew this or not, but halal slaughter was never specifically needed to perform by a Muslim. It could be any man of the cloth. It could be a Christian. It could be a Jew. It could be any basically cleric of the cloth could do the halal slaughter. But now it has to be a Muslim. So it's getting more liberal and more extreme rather than what you see with other religions like Christianity, where it gets more liberal over time.
Yeah.
And if you want an example of a Christian country that went into Islamic territory, look at Lebanon. It was once Christian, now it's Muslim. It was once the Paris of the region, and now not so much.
Yeah.
And that's because as soon as the particular population gets to a majority or majoritarian in the country, it automatically flips the faith of the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't even need to be a majority of a country, just needs to be a majority of a town. Then you've got your new town council or your new city council or whatever, and they're going to just work their will, as is perfectly understandable and normal from their perspective,
But not just that, because we're
idiotic for
allowing
us
it
not
to
to
happen.
realise that.
And if you look at the major urban centres, specifically in England, like Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, London, for example, they are now all minority white British. Nobody ever voted for this. Nobody ever wanted this. And if you look at the reason why the Labour MPs are pandering so much to the Muslim voters, if you look at all the big hitters, like Wyvett Cooper, if you look at West Streeting, if you look at Jess Phillips, they're all going to lose their seats either to Reform UK or to the Islamic Independent Bloc vote. Or Jeremy Corbyn's new party with Zahra Sultana, which I affectionately call Jezbollah.
They're all worried about losing the vote.
So that's why you see them pandering so much to that element. However, it's not going to do them any good because they will look at West Streeting and they'll go, right, he's white, he's gay. You don't represent my values. I'm going to vote for somebody who does.
Yes, and maybe they'll vote for Reform in a different universe. Well, I think we'll just have to wind up now. We're coming to the top of the hour, but Damien, you do fantastic work over at youtube.com/@ Cheshire Cat Musings, all one word. You're putting out a lot of content on there, a lot of the sensible stuff that you've heard from Damien tonight, putting out something every few days. You've got at least 13,000 people on your YouTube channel, which is a very good accomplishment. Well done for that.
Thank you.
That speaks to your the sincerity and the commitment that you've got for what you've got to say, which is ample and very good. So, folks, please do make sure that you are subscribing to youtube.com/@CheshireCatMusings. And Damien, I think we agreed that we'll keep this a monthly effort. So
before we
yeah.
drop off, I wanted to bring up your former first mistress, Nicola Sturgeon.
Oh yeah.
The raising of the colours that's gone all over Britain now, because it's spread into Wales, it's spread into Scotland. Apparently the nationalists aren't very much for the flag anymore. Apparently they're shocked by people reappropriating their own national flag, and they don't like it because it's not being used in the way that they want. I mean, I just want your quick thoughts on that before we finish, if that's all right.
Just very briefly, I think it's quite amusing and it's quite funny that she is able to discern the nature of the flag, and she's able to see a flag flying on a lamppost and know whether that's a good saltire that represents her values or whether it's a saltire that doesn't represent her values and represents the values of somebody else.
If it's not got the yes sign in the middle, then it's a bad one. It's a bad one.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. But you know what? It is catching on up here. Somebody sent a photograph just this afternoon to us on a phone of a street in central Scotland of saltire and Union Jacks on alternative lampposts down both sides of the street. That's just come up like in the last 24 hours on that particular street. So it's definitely happening. And it's good because in a way it's reclaiming for many other people the saltire that for many years was wrongly associated only with the Scottish nationalists, and patriotic Scots sometimes felt awkward about flying it if they were going to be mistaken for a separatist. But now I think that is falling away. That fear is falling away, and now it's becoming much more a flag of all the people, and its political associations thereby are becoming less, and it's more just being patriotically for Scotland. So I think it's a good thing, and I welcome it, definitely. But we'll say good night on that thought to you, and we'll have you back in again next month. Folks, say goodbye to our man, Damien. Good night.
Thank you very much for your time. All the best, and thank you. Have a good day.
Cheers.